Hello everyone, I'm here to teach you how to use your LED to make messages in Morse code. Now, I'm assuming those of you out there watching this right now have already watched our previous video, which is the blinking the LED video. And because of that, I'm assuming you already know how to do a few things, such as plugging in the LED to the Barnabas Noggin, plugging the Barnabas Noggin into the computer, and being able to operate Arduino. Some of you may be asking, what is Morse code? At its simplest, Morse code is a form of communication that's made up of dots and dashes. And putting dots and dashes together in certain ways can create the alphabet as well as the first 10 numbers, 0 through 9, as you can see on your screen. These dots and dashes can be conveyed in several different ways. So they can be conveyed through sounds. So for example, knocking on a door. So you can knock in long and short increments. You can do the same thing for light, which we will be doing later. So you can get a light to turn on for a short amount of time or for a long amount of time. The short amount of time would be a dot. The longer amount of time would be a dash. You could even do this by tapping on someone's shoulder in increments of short taps and long taps. So this is a very simple way to convey information. So long as the person you're communicating with is trained and understands Morse code, you can convey a lot through these very, very simple signals. Okay, so to better understand how we can use Morse code, we're going to have to go ahead and take a look at the rules at the top of this little cheat sheet. So I'm going to focus on the first 3 rules. And we're going to use some examples to hopefully make this a little easier for ourselves. So it says the length of a dot is 1 unit. That's rule 1. And when it says 1 unit, it's referring to a measure of time. So we're going to go ahead and keep things simple by saying 1 unit for us is the same as 1 second. So when it says the length of a dot is 1 second, that means the dot, which is typically the short signal, is going to be taking place for 1 whole second. So if we're using our LED to create Morse code, that means a dot would be the LED being on for 1 second. Rule number 2, a dash is 3 units. So for us, it's 3 units of time. It's 3 times as long as our dot. So it would take place for 3 seconds. So if I wanted the LED to give me a dash, I would just have to keep the LED on for 3 seconds. Now, rule 3 is telling us how much space do we put in between those signals. If I want to have a dot and then I want to have a dash, obviously I need the LED to turn off for the time in between. How long should that time in between be? So it says, rule number 3 says, the space between parts of the same letter is 1 unit. So for us, 1 unit is 1 second. So if we look at the letter A is a dot followed by a dash. So it would be LED on for 1 second because of rule 1. LED off for 1 second because of rule 3. LED on for 3 seconds because of rule 2. And then just turn the LED off after that to signal the end of that letter. So there are obviously 2 more rules. We're going to get into those a little bit later. For now, we're going to go ahead and just see if we can take these first 3 rules and jump in and just make something with our LED and Morse code. Alright, so here I finally am in Arduino. So this should be familiar to you guys if you are coming from the last video. I want to make a note that I have correctly chosen my port, the hardware, as well as the project ahead of time. So make sure you guys do that before you kind of get lost in programming and forget to do it later, because then you'll end up with a big ugly error in the log and you will not know why it's there. So I would suggest doing that right now. All right, after doing that, we're going to go ahead and grab the loop. We know we need one of these. And I'm going to do something that I have not shown you guys yet. By right-clicking on this loop, I get this menu to pop up, and I'm going to click on Add Comment. This gives me this little comment bubble, and I can type in it and write stuff down. So I'm going to make a little cheat sheet for myself so that I can remember the rules pretty easily. So the first thing I want to say is the example I gave where a unit of time was 1 full second is probably a little bit too long. I want to shrink down our time span a little bit so that it's a lot easier for us to see what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and say a dot is 0.3 seconds. So if a dot is 0.3 seconds, I know a dash is 3 times as long. I'm going to say a dash is, I could say 1 second. I could round to 1 second. I think I'll do that just for simplicity's sake. So a dash is 1 second. And then the time in between is 0.3 seconds. So it's the same amount of time as a dot. So I have my nice little cheat sheet here. I can, by clicking on this little question mark, I can minimize the comment. I can bring it back out. I can also change its shape to make it a little more convenient. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So why don't we go ahead and get started by doing a easy letter. So let me see here. Easy letter. I'm going to go with the letter S. So if you look at the letter S, it's just 3 dots. So 3 short blinks should be enough to convey a letter S. So let's go ahead and just quickly go over how we would do a single blink of any length. So I know if I want to blink something that I'm going to need 2 LED blocks. I know that I'm still working with pin number 13, so that is the pin on my Barnabas noggin that I have things plugged into that I can actually see work. I also know that only one of these should be on. I want it to switch between being on and being off. And that's not enough. I need to make sure that I put these weight blocks here. And doing that will allow enough time to happen that I can actually see this blink. So this will give us a blink of 1 second. We'll blink on for 1 second and we'll blink off for 1 second. However, we want to do 0.3 seconds, as that gives us the short blink, the dash, or I'm sorry, the dot. My apologies. So 0.3 seconds will give us our dot signal. And if I were just to allow this loop to run, I would see the dot signal over and over and over and over and over and over because the loop repeats itself. So the problem I would have with this is that I wouldn't be able to tell where one S starts and where the last S ended, because the S, as I showed you a little earlier, should only be 3 dots. So the question is, okay, well, if it's just doing the dot signal over and over and over, where do I know, or how do I know I've gotten to the end of an S and I'm starting a new one? So if we look at number 4, rule number 4 on this little cheat sheet here, the space between letters is 3 units. So what I should do is I should have an S, or I'm sorry, I should have a dot, a dot, a dot, and then the pause after the last dot, after that third dot, should be a little bit longer than the rest. So I need to do this 3 times. So I can go in here and I can grab more LED blocks and I can put them out onto the workspace. But I can right click up here and clone all this nonsense. So now I have 2. Now I have 3. Now if I just put them here, look at that. I have 3 blinks now. And I know that the time the last blink should be spent off, this guy right here, should be, instead of 1 unit of time, which is 0.3 seconds, should be 3 units of time. So for us, that we're just going to say that's 1 second. And I guess I'll update my little sheet up here to say time after letter is 1 second. Just so I'm thorough. Make this a little bit bigger so I can get all of the rules in there at once. Awesome. So I have blink here. Let's see, blink here, and then blink here, and then this, importantly, is 1 instead of 0.3. All right, so I think we're now ready to give this a try. I'm just going to go ahead and attempt to upload this, and we can take a look at our Barnabas Noggin and the LED and see if we can decipher this signal. So I pretty distinctly see that it blinks in that nice group of 3, and that there's a pause after each 3 signals from it. So I can very clearly tell one S from another S, which is great. Now I'm going to go ahead and upload blank code really quick, just so I can get it to stop blinking for a second. Oops, left click, okay. Now, while this worked, it is a little bit inefficient, so there is a better way to create this signal than to have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that would be 12. Yeah, there's 12 total blocks here. So we can do a little bit better than that. I am actually going to take everything after the first blink, and I'm just going to get rid of it. I'm just going to drag it over here, drop it, it's gone. Then I'm going to go into control, and I'm going to grab this repeat block. Now this guy is really nice. Notice that it has this sort of mouth here, kind of like our loop does. Our loop do has it. So this command section of the repeat block also has it, and I can jam stuff in there if I really want to. Now what the repeat block does is it takes whatever commands are in it and it does them a given number of times before it moves on to any other part of the code. So for example, I can do this. I can take my dot signal, excuse me, I can take my dot, I can put it in here, I can say, I cannot left click on things, all right. I can say do this 3 times, and this is essentially an S. And then I can take this repeat block and put it in here, and now because it's inside the loop do, it will work appropriately, it'll do exactly what I want it to. With the exception of the fact that we don't have that extra bit of time that it's waiting at the end of each 3rd blink. So this goes back to our original problem of it's just going to go blink, 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 blink. And I'm not going to be able to tell where the S starts or where it ends. It's just a bunch of blinks all together. So what I can do is I can grab another weight and I can put it outside of the repeat. So it's going to repeat this short blink, this dot, 3 times. And then when it gets outside of it, I can tell it, hey, wait a little bit longer so that I can tell we're at the end of the S. Now, remember we said the number 1, we said 1 second is the appropriate amount of time to wait at the end of a letter. However, since we're already waiting 0.3 on that last blink, this only needs to be 0.7 so that adds up to 1 second. So now our code will do this. It'll turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off, and then exit that repeat block to this wait block here and wait a little bit longer before it starts the whole process over again. So I'm going to say, let's just go ahead and upload this and see if this does work the way I claim it does. So let's just upload it. We should expect to see the exact same behavior as we saw before. So 1, 2, 3. Looks pretty clear to me, so it looks good. Notice how we've just condensed our code down. Our code is way easier to stomach. It all fits on the screen. Isn't that nice? So I would suggest if you're using, if you're trying to do Morse code, particularly with a letter like S, you should probably use the repeat block. It's going to be an effective tool for you in the future if you're doing these sort of repetitive tasks. And we're going to make good use of it in the rest of this video as well. Okay, so now we're ready to do something a little bit more ambitious. Before we get started though, just to get the light to stop blinking because it's driving me insane, I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to go ahead and, all right, so I'm going to put this back here. So looking at that little cheat sheet, provided by Wikipedia by Huawei. I should probably mention that. Okay, so a common message in Morse code, it's probably the first message that anyone learns in Morse code, is SOS. So it's kind of a signal for help. Now you may notice, we already know S is one of the easiest letters to do. It's 3 dots. If we look at O is conveniently 3 dashes. So if we made the signal SOS, that would be a pretty effective way to use our new knowledge of the repeat block. And also, you know, it would be teaching us probably the most helpful signal to know in Morse code. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to attempt to make SOS. So SOS is 3 dots followed by 3 dashes followed by 3 dots. So that's just 3 short blinks, 3 long blinks, 3 short blinks. Cool. So in order to do that, I think that it might be a good idea to use that clone function again. So I'm going to mouse over repeat. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to left click on clone. And now I have a second bunch of blinks. And I'm going to do it one more time. So I'm going to organize these into 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots, and now I just have to change this middle section appropriately because this is still giving us dots, not dashes. So if I look at my set of rules, I can see that a dash is 1 second, and I should be able to just do this and achieve the desired effect. So that now gives us dashes. So this section of code now represents 3 dashes instead of 3 dots. I want to also point out that the time in between each of the dashes or dots is still 0.3 seconds. So you may be tempted to change this to 1 second as well, but that's not what the rules we've been given tell us to do. So the time that we have the LED off is going to remain the same whether it's a dot or a dash. I'm going to go ahead and place these. So notice that the dashes are going second and then the 3 other dots are going in third. So this looks like a completely reasonable code, but there is one rule that we have neglected. So if you remember, our little Morse code cheat sheet has a rule number 5. And it says the space between words is 7 units. Now, SOS is not exactly a word, right? It's an acronym, but we are going to go ahead and treat it as its own word. So that means after my last letter, so after that last S, I should pause for 7 whole units in order to get it across that, hey, this is the end of the word. So the question is, if a dot is 0.3 seconds and a dash is 1 second, how long should that space in between words be? So it should be 7 times this, which is approximately 2 seconds. So it's actually 2.1 seconds. We're just going to call it 2 seconds just to be nice and simple. So we're going to say time after word is 2 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bigger again so I can see all the rules at once. So that just means the very last delay here needs to be long enough that the entire delay between this wait and this wait is 2 seconds. So I need to make sure that they're collectively 2 whole seconds. So that means if this were 1.7 seconds, so I'd have 0.3 seconds plus 1.7 seconds, should give me approximately or exactly 2 seconds. So my last off here that signals the end of a word is appropriately timed, or so I hope. So once again, we should probably upload this and we should observe and see if we can see deliberately our 3 letters appear different. So we should be able to see clearly 3 short blinks, then 3 long blinks, then 3 short blinks, then a long enough delay so that we know that we've reached the end of a word. So I'm going to upload this code and we can look for that. All right, so the SOS is pretty clear. Now, is it clear enough that that last wait is longer than the time waiting in between letters? So is the time waiting after a word long enough that I can distinguish it from the other pauses in between those letters? It's hard to say. You know what? I'm going to break our rules a little bit, because to me, the delay between letters and the delay at the end of the word is not long enough for me to really see. And just to make things easy on myself, I'm just going to bump it up by a whole nother second and see if that makes it more clear to me. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's a pretty clear O. Another very clear S. And that wait might be excessively long, but to me it's very clear now that the end of the word has happened. Otherwise I'd have a difficult time kind of distinguishing. So that's something that you may want to keep in mind when you're ending words. Maybe you need to fudge these rules a little bit, right? I decided, hey, this 5th rule didn't really work out for me, so I elongated it to like 3 seconds. So I might say, for my own personal rules, it's 3 seconds. So this is all I have to show you. However, if you go online, you find the Morse code alphabet as I have, you are more than welcome to go ahead and experiment on your own. As a matter of fact, I encourage it. Try counting to 10. Try writing your name, writing a short message. See if one of your family members can decode it for you. So aside from that, I will just leave it here and see you guys in the next video.